Hey guys, I feel like we're in this really weird spot in the middle of this corona craziness. On the one hand, I'm ready to throw my phone out the window if there's another email about how a company or service or website I went to once 15 years ago is handling COVID-19. On the other hand, when I get an email or something that ignores it completely, I'm like, how tone deaf? Am I right? So as we sit here, we're in the middle of week 2, more or less, depending on where you live, and we're all adjusting. Like I said last week, we're keeping things business as usual over here at Salad with a Side of Fries. So we're airing this week's episode as planned, which was recorded before the coronapocalypse. So if you're over it, we've got you. Nevertheless, the universe works in magical ways, and everything from this interview is actually perfect to be hearing and talking about right now. So with that, here we go, another awesome interview for you, a delicious recipe for our members, and of course, another nutrition nugget. Welcome to Salad with a Side of Fries. I'm your host, Jenn, talking wellness and weight loss for real life. We're here to clear up the myths, misinformation, bad science, and marketing to teach you how to eat and how to cheat. Are you ready? I'm having salad with a side of fries. Welcome back to Salad with a Side of Fries. As always, I'm your host, Jenn, and today we're tackling the very complex topic of self-care. Before we dig in with our expert guest, here's a message from our partner for this episode, Snap Cleaning Products. Make household cleaning a snap with their eco-friendly, economical, multi-purpose Snap products. Snap's concentrated multi-purpose formulas perform light to industrial strength jobs all in one bottle, saving you time and money. Snap products give you the cleaning power of a variety of cleaners, saving you time, money, and storage space, which in New York City is definitely a premium. Snap products are developed with the environment in mind, using plant-based ingredients that are biodegradable, phosphate-free, non-toxic, and bottled in recyclable containers. Get more for your money with Snap. So with all the talk these days of contagious viruses going around, I rely on Snap to cleaner disinfectant. Its phosphate-free formulation is designed to provide effective cleaning, deodorization, and disinfection, especially for, catch this, you guys, hospitals, nursing homes, schools, food processing plants, food service establishments, transportation terminals, office buildings, manufacturing facilities, lodging, retail businesses, athletic and recreational facilities, and of course, households, where housekeeping is of prime importance and controlling the hazard of cross-contamination. Snap 2 Cleaner Disinfectant is EPA registered. And basically, guys, if it's good enough for a hospital and nursing home, it's good enough for my home. So make household disinfecting a snap with Snap 2 Cleaner Disinfectant. To get 10% off your order, text the word CLEAN, CLEAN, to 844-947-4846, and you'll receive the link and coupon code right to your phone. Again, simply text the word CLEAN, CLEAN, to 844-947-4846. This is a toll-free number, but standard text and data rates may apply. All right. Cleaning could be one piece of your self-care, maybe, but here with us to learn all about it, we have Paula Rizzo. Paula is an Emmy Award-winning television producer, best-selling author, and a media trainer and strategist. As a former senior health producer for Fox News Channel for more than a decade, she produced segments with a range of top experts, including JJ Virgin, Jillian Michaels, and Deepak Chopra. She also worked in local news in New York City as a producer for WCBS, WPIX, and WLNY. She's the founder of listproducer.com, author of Listful Thinking, Useful Lists to be more productive, highly successful and less stressed, and Listful Living, a list-making journey to a less stressed you. She's also the co-creator of Lights Camera Expert, an online course geared towards helping entrepreneurs, authors, and experts get media attention. She also teaches Become a Video Star, a virtual workshop that empowers experts to create their own compelling videos. So without further ado, please let me welcome Paula Rizzo. Thanks, Paula.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk a little self-care.
Yeah. So I shared with everybody all of your accolades and professional background, but I love your story and how you came to be the list making guru and what led you to completely shifting your life around this. So will you share your story with everybody?
Of course, yeah. I've always been a crazy list maker, always loved lists, but it goes beyond that. Lists really changed my life. They were able to, help me be more productive and successful and all of that in my career and in my job and all of that. But then, at home, I noticed I wasn't as productive and efficient as I was at work. And when I started to sort of use those lists at home, in a way that I did at work. So as a television producer, I would go interview a lot of people and I'd always have a list with me of all the questions I wanted to ask, all the shots I needed to get. And then I was like a disorganized mess at home, forgetting things, not showing up for appointments. It's just like, it's not the same person. What's going on here? What's the difference? It was the list, really. And the way that I first started using them really was when I was looking for an apartment in New York City with my husband. And it was so overwhelming. And, you walk in and you're like, oh, there's a wine fridge. This is awesome. And then you forget to ask pertinent questions like how many closets are there and things like that. Right. So I started making a list like I would if I was going on a video shoot. I would make a list of every question I wanted to ask, everything I wanted to make sure to look at or know about, what's the closest subway, where's the light coming from in the rooms, whatever, things that really make a difference. And when I started to do that, people actually started to ask me for the list when they started looking for apartments. And a friend of mine said, you're onto something. People don't use lists the way that you do. They're not like making checklists and doing all these extra things with them. So you should really start a blog. And that's, that was 8 years ago. I started listproducer.com and then eventually became my first book, Listful Thinking, and now this second book, Listful Living.
Awesome. And then this shifted into self-care for you with sort of a health scare of your own, right?
Yeah. So my first book came out about 5 years ago. And a year after that book was out, I was working full time as a senior health producer. I was launching this book. I was doing everything everyone asked me to do. You want me to be on your podcast? Yep. Sure. You want me to speak to your group? Absolutely. Just saying yes. So working full time and then also just keep going after work is over, right? Like very little sleep.
Same thing. Yep.
Because when you're passionate and excited about something, you want to get out there, you want to spread the word. And so I did do everything. And about a year after the book came out, my appendix burst, which is a really dramatic way for your body to tell you, hey, listen up over here. You need to slow down. What's going on? I was not listening. Most people don't have their appendix actually burst. It's actually quite rare to have it be that bad, but I waited too long. I thought it was food poisoning. I figured it'd go away. I didn't have time to go to the ER. I figured, oh, what a waste of time. I'll be stuck there for hours. Well, guess what? I was stuck in the hospital for 9 days. I was out of work for 6 weeks. It took me over a year to recover. So, wow. But when that happened, it was a real wake-up call for me of what I was allowing onto my list, what I was doing and what I was saying yes to and, where I was spending my time. And as I was recovering, there was only so much I could really do. So everything came off the list. And guess what? The world still turned and things still got done. And it was, it's just a big wake up call.
Yeah. And so one of the things you talk about in Listful Living is that burnout syndrome is real, right? The World Health Organization now recognizes that. So short of someone's appendix bursting, what are other signs and indications for all of us to realize, number one, that we're not alone, but number two, like this is not in your head, it's real, and maybe it's time to do something about it.
Yeah, well, we just get so used to working at such a pace that it feels normal. And so when you're not working at that pace, so like when I was in the hospital, when I was, recovering at home, I didn't have to keep up that pace. And so I realized, wait a minute, that's crazy. The way I was operating was just not kind to my body. And it really can hit you body, mind, soul. As a longtime health reporter, I did a lot of stories on what stress can do to your body. I mean, it can manifest in so many different ways, from allergies to, chronic illnesses and all kinds of stuff. So, things that are happening to you, there's an underlying cause for it, right? There's a root cause. It can't just be, popping up. There's a reason. So to really be mindful of how do I feel? And that's what, in this book, I go through a lot of exercises to bring you into the moment and say, okay, so I went and had lunch with that person, or I went and took on that client or whatever. How did that actually feel? Instead of just like going into the mode of doing and saying, oh, well, I have to, and this is what it takes and all that. No. Just like step back for a second and tap in to see, like, how did I feel? Do I feel anxious now? Do I feel fired up? Am I excited? Well, what are you feeling?
Right. And so I think, right, like the flip side, or maybe the remedy to burnout, is this self-care.
Mm.
But I sort of put it in quotes and add an eye roll because
totally.
I also feel like it's a phrase that everyone's using, and now it almost has no weight to some degree. So one of my questions for you is, what do you think are, the biggest misconceptions around self-care, and what does it really mean?
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of stories on self-care through the years, and it's like mindfulness. It becomes the word that it becomes the buzzword that people say, but people don't really know what is it, how should we do it. But people get self-care very wrong. And the reason they get it wrong is because they think, oh, it needs to be a week-long vacation, or it needs to be a, $300 massage. It needs to be this huge, big, thing that you do for yourself. And look, that's all awesome, and you should do that. But it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be so extreme. It can be tiny little moments in your day that you take back just for yourself. I recently just went through and cleaned out my pantry, which sounds like not a big deal, but it was so stressful to go in that pantry and not be able to find anything and be irritated and annoyed all the time. You know what I mean? So that was actually an act of self-care, going through and saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to organize this so that it works well for me, and I'm not, pulling my hair out every time I'm looking for the salt. And something like that is not, typically what you think of when you think of self-care, but it could be things like that. It could be, having time to have a cup of tea in between, calls, the way you set up your schedule, how you organize your travel, right? Like what days you take off. I always try as much as I can to take off the day after I get back from a trip. Whether
I love that.
Yeah, whether it's for pleasure or whether it's for, work. Travel is stressful. I'm a good traveler. I love it, but it's stressful. So I always give myself that extra little day to be kind.
Yeah, I also think a lot of times it's not so much the travel, it's coming back and trying to get back into reality. And so that extra time gives you that little bit that you need. And one of the things two things that you have in the book, self-care is kindness toward yourself, which I love that phrase and that way of thinking about it. And essentialism, the pursuit of less.
Yeah.
And I thought that's really interesting because it shifts a lot of the perspective that a lot of us have around pursuing our goals in life. That maybe there's something to that.
Yeah. And it's not that, I'm saying, oh, do less, don't be as successful, don't be as driven.
Right.
Like that's not what we're saying. It's just, how can you get the right things done? How can you put the right things on your list so that you are getting things done, but you're less stressed, right? It's taking a little bit less effort. Essentialism is an amazing book that I recommend to everyone. It really does look at things in the same vein of, where are you spending your time? What are your priorities? And that's a lot of what I go into in this book, is to help people determine what their priorities are. And a lot of times we think we know, or we think, oh, this is what my priority should be, but it's not actually the truth. So once you are crystal clear on what your priority is, and if health is your priority, right, then you're going to make every other decision through that lens. So if you're looking to get more sleep, then if somebody invites you to a networking event at night, you have to say no. Not no forever, but no right now, because it doesn't align with your priority.
Yep. So interesting. So actually, I want to take this moment, speaking of being kind to ourselves and focusing on our health, right? I think for many of us, food choices can be sometimes our stress relief, right?
Yeah.
Like we use food, and then sometimes they're also a source of stress. So we're making this easy for all of our members, right? This week, our members will be getting the recipe for creamy quinoa pudding.
Ooh.
It's delicious. Yeah, right. And it feels indulgent, even though it's actually nutritious. So no need for guilt. If you're a chia pudding or a rice pudding kind of person, this is for you. So that's going in this week's member email. So guys, quick reminder to everybody, if you haven't already joined the membership program, be sure to do that. Here's how it works. You still get your podcast totally free. The membership allows you to double down on what you're loving from us. So for a whopping $10 a month, you get a weekly email from me that contains a recipe, a monthly article diving into topics that we're not necessarily covering on the show, extra discounts from me and our partners, and exclusive access to live Q&A sessions to answer your questions and more, tackle what your needs are. So to join the fun, go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. In 3 clicks, you'll be ready to go. You can pay with Apple Pay and whatever makes you happy. So again, it's glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. And hurry so that you get this week's creamy quinoa pudding. All right, back to Listful Living, our brilliant book for today. So one of the things you started to touch on is the time management and the priorities piece.
Right.
And there's sort of burnout and self-care, and then this like time management in the middle and the lists in the middle. So help everybody sort of connect how those things all fit together.
Yeah. So, a lot of the self-care is really, how are you setting up your day? How are you setting up your schedule? What are you allowing onto your to-do list? Or, and this became really apparent for me when I started working for myself. So, I left Fox News to start my own company as a media trainer, and strategist, and also as an author, obviously. Right. And so when you have your own thing, it's really easy to say, I will talk to anybody at any time they want to, because it's a new business and it's a new hustle and it's a new thing. And so that's what I did, in the very beginning. Like I hadn't learned anything, it's like, it was a new challenge. Right. So, I had opened my schedule. So anytime you want to talk to me between 10 and 5, here I am. And I hated it. It was actually the worst. I was not eating lunch. I was going from call to call to call. I wasn't able to follow up with people afterwards because I just had no time. And I said, you know what? I need to set this up in a better way. And I thought through what would actually make me feel better. What is my productivity style? How do I work best? And that's really important, is for you to know yourself. And so if you're not a morning person, I'm never going to tell you to become a morning person, because it's just going to make you cranky. Yeah, it's going to make you cranky. I have tried it, and that is what happens. So you really have to tap into when you work best. And I don't like to do calls first thing in the morning. I like to sort of ease into my day. I like to have a nice cup of tea. I like to be quiet. I like to meditate for 10 minutes. I like to read the newspaper and kind of like catch up on the day and see what's going on. And then once I've done that for myself, then I feel ready to serve and help other people. Then I can start to do, business phone calls or whatever else I need to do, writing and that kind of thing. So I set up my day very specifically. I do calls at 11:30, at 2, and at 3:30, and that's it. And if people are not able to do those times, of course, sometimes I'm flexible, you know what I mean? But I've found that those times really work. And I did the same thing when I worked in corporate America too. I had very specific times when I would do phone calls or when I would do meetings, because I needed the time in between to actually get work done. Because a lot of times we're talking or networking or doing, and you're not doing the stuff you're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. So there were a couple things that you gave in the book for sort of, the first is finding your productivity style, right? So how do people go about that? Like, what can we give everybody as something that they can do right now to move forward in that?
First, you have to start noticing when do you feel most fired up to do different tasks. I like to write later in the day. I don't like to get up early and write. I know a lot of people like that, but that's not my thing. I used to think it was because I could only really write creatively after work, but that's not really true. It's just that's when I'm more creative. That's when I like to write. So I typically write a little bit later on in the day, or evenings are really great too. So to know that about yourself, right? To know that, hey, if I'm going to stack my day, I want to be able to take the tasks that I'm going to be really good at this particular part of the day and put them on my schedule then. so that you really show up and you really do a good job. But it's a lot of noticing at first. And that is, part of all of this is to just look at your life like a journalist and say, okay, let's just see what we notice, right? Are you procrastinating a lot in the morning? Do you need to get going? When do you want to really start talking to people? Do you like to do meetings in person or over the phone? All of that stuff. I also changed the structure of my week. So Mondays I'm working, but I typically don't do calls on Mondays. I use Mondays for, networking lunches or to do check-in calls with people. I don't typically talk to clients on Mondays. And then I do, client calls on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. And then Fridays, I leave open for creativity. That's actually when I wrote my book, Listful Living, was written on Fridays. And I just blocked out every Friday, and I had a very specific list of what I was going to write on what Fridays so that I got it done. And for me, I love that pace of the week as opposed to just everything is open all the time. I like to be able to have those little guardrails on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I front stack my week these days, and then like you, leaving Fridays a little more flexible, tackle things before the weekend. A couple things from the book, and you sort of touched on it here, of you doing your writing or more creative things in the evening. You mentioned that sometimes our creativity turns on when we're tired.
Yes.
And that was so validating for me to even hear, because even the podcast stuff, I tend to do it more in the evening. And now it makes sense why, because it's certainly more of a creative task, a lot of times. So
for sure. The inner critic sort of shuts off. And this I learned from Suzanne Kingsbury, who's the creator of the Gateless Method, which is a particular way of writing. And, it's one of those things where when you feel like, oh, I have to get it right, I have to make sure this is perfect, you stop yourself from actually getting the creativity out. But when you're a little tired, that part of your brain sort of shuts off and it's like, man, I don't care. I'm kind of asleep. So write whatever you want. And it just allows you to be a little bit more creative.
Yeah. And then another piece that you talked about is sort of realizing how long things actually take.
Yeah.
We might think something's going to take 15 minutes and then we turn around an hour later and we're like, oh my God, this totally threw everything off. And the Pomodoro technique. So you talk everybody through how to get accurate in our time estimations and the Pomodoro technique.
Yeah. So as a television producer, I'm keenly aware of what, 5 seconds feels like, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. Most people don't think in seconds, but I'm trying to get you to do it a little bit, right? To understand and know how long does it take you to do your makeup in the morning, right? It takes me exactly 10 minutes. I know because I've timed myself. So I know how much time I need to leave myself to be able to put makeup on if I have to run out the door or if I have a phone call or if I have something going on, so that I can really, pack in what I need to during that time. But also, to your point about we think it's going to take 5 minutes and it takes 35 minutes. That happens all the time. We either underestimate or overestimate, and that will sometimes lead to procrastination. So if you don't have a real firm grip on how long it's actually going to take you, you build it up in your mind oh, it's going to take me 4 days to actually do it. And guess what? It took you 4 minutes to finish it, right? So really playing those games with yourself to be able to say, okay, I'm going to time how long this actually takes so I can take note of it. And then it helps you to stack it in your day easier to say, okay, well, if this is really going to take me a half hour, I do have a half hour at the beginning of the day that I can do that or whatever. And the Pomodoro technique is really great because it gives you sort of a framework to use this. And it is 25 minutes of targeted time. So you're supposed to work on one task for 25 minutes without interruption and start a timer. So it's called Pomodoro because Pomodoro means tomato in Italian, and the guy who invented it is Italian. And so he basically says that if you work on something for 25 minutes uninterrupted, you'll get more done. And then if you do get interrupted or you do get distracted, you're supposed to stop the timer. So it is a really good way for you to sort of see, when am I getting distracted? When am I going onto Facebook and saying, let me just check to see who went on vacation this week, right? It's that doesn't matter.
Totally. And I think for everybody, the accuracy in our time estimates and being deliberate about how much time we spend on things allows us to create space for the self-care, right?
For sure, for sure. And also, it's good to have rules around things too. So I had a person I knew that if someone canceled an appointment with her, she would do one of the things on her self-care list. So whether that be, make a cup of tea for herself or, call a friend, whatever it is. So she would turn that negative into a positive.
I love that. Yeah, you talk about Hygge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So tell everybody, I'll let you explain the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a Danish word, and it basically means like coziness. It's sort of like a kindness to yourself. And in the same way, it's the idea that you do things that make you feel really great, right? And so what could that be? That could be reading a book that you really want to read, right? And it sounds like silly, like of course but people don't actually make the time or serve it to themselves like a luxury. You know what I mean? We kind of overlook these things. And so to put that on your list to say, okay, if I made a list of all the things that truly will make me happy in this moment, right? Even if it's for 5 minutes, it doesn't have to be a full day. It could be, I get to read a chapter of a book I'm really into for 20 minutes. Okay, or I get to go on a virtual vacation. Go on Google, pick a destination you really have always wanted to go to, zoom around for 15 minutes and check out the, things on Google Maps and all that, and Google, the Street View. And it's just like a fun way to take your brain somewhere else. But it's these little moments in your day that you can really pull back and say, okay, I need some time for me. And it doesn't have to be such a big ordeal.
Yeah, I love the virtual vacations thing, right? So I want to make sure everybody caught that. It's really sitting there using the Google Maps Street View to explore someplace new, maybe go sit on a beach and stare at the water that's moving through the Google Maps camera, right?
Yeah, exactly. And just, it just gives you a little bit of a break instead of going from task to task to task, because that's what typically we'll do. It's like, oh, something got canceled. Let me just continue to go into go mode. It's like, well, what if you use some of those little moments to replenish yourself instead? Because that's where we get into this chronic issue with stress. In the book, I interview a stress expert who I've interviewed for both my books, and I interviewed for a lot of stories when I worked at Fox. She's really great. Her name is Hygge Hanna. And, she explains how we actually really do need stress because it's the thing that really propels us to the doing, right? It gets you going, it gets you motivated, it makes you do the speaking engagement or whatever it is that you're working on. You get up there, you're a little stressed out, your body needs to be stressed to do it. But the problem we get into is when we don't allow that our body to then rest afterwards. We just go from stressful situation to stressful situation, and that then becomes chronic. You need to cool off in between. You need to give yourself a little bit of a rest.
Right. Like if you're running from the bear, you got to slow down and catch your breath.
Exactly right.
We have another episode on stress, and it's all about, our body is constantly in this chemical running from the bear situation.
For sure.
So in this new life, right, where we are setting guidelines with our time and that allowing us to be freer and saying no to certain things, you talked about shifting FOMO to JOMO.
Yes. The joy of missing out.
Yeah. So how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, we get so wrapped up in the social media and saying, oh, I didn't go to that party, or I didn't go to that event, or I didn't go do that thing. And look, everybody else is having such a great time and everyone's in Bali. And oh my gosh, what am I doing? And you really get down that rabbit hole. But the idea here is to pull back and think through, like, what is it that you really want to do? Where do you want to spend your time? And then you feel much better about saying no to certain things because you feel like, oh, I should be doing all of these things. I should, be out there. I should be doing this stuff. But the truth is that think about what will you be doing with that time instead, right? This happened to me when a bunch of people that I knew were getting married. You get into the age where everybody starts to get married, and everybody invites you to their weddings, and it's like every other weekend. It's like Sweet 16 all over again.
I'm a professional bridesmaid.
Okay, so you get it. And so it's like, do I really need to be there? Am I really that close to this person? Is this really the best use of my time? And, there were a couple of weddings that came up for people that I was like, you know what? I really want to use that weekend to do something else. And I did. And it was hard, but I pushed back and I said, you know what? I'm going to say no. And then I ended up, going to a Broadway show with my mother or doing something that I really wanted to be doing, right? Not out of obligation, not out of, oh, I should do it. It looks good if I go, that kind of thing. So that's when you kind of switch into the joy of missing out, like the joy that you didn't have to go and you were able to stand up and say, you know what? That's not where I'm going to spend my time. I'm really going to make sure that my priorities are aligned with what I need. And this is what it is.
Yeah. And I love, it's sort of a connection in my head as we're talking about this, choosing what you're saying yes and no to, and the recommendation you have of writing a letter to yourself.
Yeah.
To be read a year from now. And it's this idea of saying, like, setting the priorities and the intentions of like, okay, if here's where I am in a year, right? What are the things that fall into that and not, so that we can then be deliberate and intentional about what we're saying yes and no to. So can we give everybody sort of the tips or the guideline for how to write this letter to themselves? Because I think it's a great exercise.
Yeah, it was actually really fun. And this came about, I remember doing this as a kid. They had us do this in class and then they would send us the letter. I think it was like 2 years or 3 years out or something. They would send this letter from yourself. And it was just, that letter was kind of like, oh, I really love this book now or whatever, So the way that it came up was, I was working at Fox full time and I was sort of like, I know there's something else. I've been doing a lot of other things on the side. I have a book. I've been doing a lot of speaking. What's next for me? And I had sort of that moment of sitting in a park at my lunch break saying, oh, I really hope in a year's time I'm not doing this again. I'm not sitting here thinking, what should I be doing? Right? I need to start moving into another direction. And so I went back to my desk. I wrote myself an email that I had sent through Gmail. You can send it, schedule it to be sent ahead. And so I had it scheduled to send to myself in a year, and I totally had forgotten about it. And I got it a year later, and it was like shocking to me because I had already made all of the moves to leave. I've had given my notice. I'd already started, working towards creating my own business and all of that. So it's really important to be able to say to yourself, hey, here's what I feel like in this moment, so that when you do get that email or letter or whatever in the future, it is sort of a check with yourself because I had made the motions to leave the job, right? And it was really scary. And to get that letter as confirmation to say, you really want this. This is really what you wanted, to take me back to that moment where I was like, oh, I don't know if I can do this every day anymore. It was a good reminder to say, oh, you are doing the right thing. You are moving in the way that you should be moving.
I love it. Yeah. I wrote mine as I was going through the book. Yeah.
Excellent.
So we'll see a year from now. I'll report back.
Yes, I want to know.
Yeah. So when we first met, you and I were both sort of in the beginning of our meditation practice of doing it every single day. So I'm checking in. How's it going? What have you noticed?
Yes. Well, I really do find that it helps. Sometimes I'm very consistent. My most consistent, I think I did like 56 days in a row, which was like very
Amazing.
Good. I use the Calm app, which I love. You do it for 10 minutes a day and it's, super, super easy. But, I do notice that I'm a little bit, I don't react as quickly. I sort of like see what's happening, assess it. Okay. And then jump in or not. It most recently happened. Actually, the event that we met at, I was in a cab and on my way there, and former me would have been freaking out because there was like this traffic jam and they were trying to go around us. And there was this whole big, New York City. It was just like a disaster and there's honking horns. And I was like not even paying attention. I was sort of like, I looked at it and I was like, well, I guess it's going to take a little longer, huh? And the driver was like, yep. And I was like, all right, I guess maybe we'll go this way. And he's like, all right, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. And I was like, all right. Instead of like freaking out, it just really like allows you to sort of take a step back.
Yeah, I've had the same thing. I think it's like I almost observe myself too.
Yeah.
In my own mood or how I'm reacting or not reacting to things. Or I notice also like other people reacting in ways that maybe would have been my old default.
For sure.
Like I identify it. I want to move on to some off-topic questions that we ask everybody who joins us. But before that, is there anything else you want to make sure people learn or understand about self-care, of course, other than buying the book and,
Of course. Well, thank you. Yes. Well, it is just to not be so hard on yourself. I think even in the idea of, taking better care of yourself, we really guilt ourselves.
Yes.
And we need to really not do that. Just like take a step back and say, look, if I could do one thing a week, one thing a month to start, just have, have it be a small thing that you do and not be so hard on yourself that you're not doing it right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Because it's also like we add this new thing and then we take it with the same approach.
Exactly. It's got to be like all out, right? It's like, okay, just go easy here.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So these are a few questions that I ask everybody we interview. So the first one is, what's the best thing you've done for your health this week? And what's the naughtiest thing you've done related to your health this week?
Oh, well, the best thing I think is that, I always do make time for lunch, which I think is really important because otherwise I get super cranky. And so I always make sure that I have some healthy lunch, and I've had healthy lunch this whole week. So that's nice. a win. But then, I really do love potato chips. So I have to say my bad thing was that I did indulge a bit in some, crispy deliciousness, but I think it kind of offset it with all the healthy lunches I was having.
Right. We're allowed, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you were to embark on a different career, what would you do?
That's interesting. Well, I sort of always thought I would do event planning. It's very much like television production. Yeah, it's very, very similar. So I've dipped a toe in here and there through the years, but I always thought, I think that would have been the job I would have done.
I could see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite book on any topic or even fiction other than your area of expertise?
Okay. The book about Henrietta Lacks. It's a book that it was turned into a movie that Oprah produced. It's a nonfiction book that reads like fiction. It is fascinating. It's a science book, which I'm not a science nerd. I'm not usually into that kind of thing, but it is an amazing, amazing book. Rebecca Skloot is the author, and I'm totally forgetting the full name of the book, but it's about Henrietta Lacks. And it's really fascinating because it's about this woman in the South whose cells were used for all kinds of science experiments and things that, made these huge discoveries, and her family made no money from it. And she died a poor person. Yeah, like it's an amazing, amazing story. So yes.
Awesome. All right, everybody, add it to your list, right?
Yes.
If you could cure one ailment, disease, sickness, what would it be?
Oh, wow. There's so many. Diabetes, I think. I think diabetes is the one that is really, it's really tough. I have a lot of family members who have, suffered through the years with it. And it's a tough one.
Yeah, for sure. All right. If you were a superhero, what would be your superpower other than list making?
Oh yeah. I'm already a super list maker. I think I would have be able to hear, it's not X-ray hearing, but be able to hear what people are thinking, so that you can kind of get an inside scoop into what they're really thinking about,
Yeah. Well, there were a couple movies like that. What is it?
Yeah, there's a new show that's out like that too, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Your biggest pet peeve?
My biggest pet peeve. My biggest pet peeve are people who say they're going to do something and then don't. And, I'll be there. Oh, I'll show up and do this thing. And they know they can't do it because you're going to be all the way on the other side of Manhattan. There's literally no way that you can be in two places at once. It's okay to say no. Right?
Yeah.
Be realistic. So I hate when people do that because it just because it comes from not knowing, wanting to please people and wanting to show up and wanting to make people happy. Even with the, book launches, I always give this example every time I'm at a book party or whatever. It's people say, oh, I'm going to be there. I want to be there. And they know they can't be. And that's okay. But, it's kind of a pet peeve.
Yeah, no, for me, there's a piece of integrity around that.
Yeah.
That's tied to it.
For sure.
All right. In your opinion, what's the next frontier in wellness?
Oh, wow. The new frontier in wellness. It's interesting because now people are really giving, mental health and
Hmm.
burnout, all the things that we were talking about, like real weight, right? It's not just this thing where, oh yeah, some people suffer with it. It's like everybody is having this issue. And so I think it's going to be where corporations are really paying attention, and they're going to start to be giving tools and really allowing people to not burn out. I mean, there's always going to be industries where, like corporate lawyers and things like, right, they're billing by the hour, so they're showing up no matter what. But I think that's going to be a big area that it will really be, it's untapped sort of.
Yeah. Well, I hope so for all my friends. I escaped, you escaped, but I have a lot of friends who are all still there. So fingers crossed that is the case. Well, thank you again for being here. Tell everybody how to connect with you, how to find all of your tools and resources.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thank you for having me. If you go to listproducer.com/checklist, you will get my checklist to be able to, get a list making starter kit. And, if you want to find out about the book, you can go to listfulliving.com.
Awesome.
Nutrition nugget time. So this one actually came at the request or suggestion of one of our fans, Gretchen Ulrichsen. So Gretchen, thank you. Today, guys, our nutrition nugget is all about water. Water, agua, H2O, whatever you want to call it. It's important. So signs we're not getting enough. You may feel fatigued or have a headache. Dry skin or even acne-prone skin. Sometimes our skin overproduces oil when we're dehydrated. Being dehydrated also stresses or puts added strain on a lot of our important organs, which leads to that fatigue that you might be experiencing, less energy, less focus. You might even be a little moody or easily irritated. So we want to make sure we're getting enough water. And the other side of that coin is the benefits of proper hydration. So certainly it assists in proper digestion, improved complexion, added energy, potentially improved metabolism. It can help relieve constipation and reduce a lot of that belly bloating. So in today's nutrition nugget, focused on water, I'm going to answer a bunch of the questions that I get all about water. So the first one, or the one that I get the most often, is how much should we really be drinking? The rule of thumb that most people go by is the 8x8 rule, which is 8-ounce glasses of water. So that's 64 ounces a day. Some say you should have half your body weight in ounces. The CDC guideline says 2.7 liters per day. So I got you. I'm coming in for the conversion. So 1 liter is about 35-ish ounces. So 2.7 liters is about 95 ounces. Frankly, I'm less concerned about which guideline you follow. It's more that you think and, just get the water in and focus on getting as much as you can. There is a point where too much is too much, and we'll get to that later. But choose your guideline and go with it. So the next question that comes up is, does my coffee, tea, soda, etc. count as part of my total water consumption? The short answer is no. Water is water, and nothing else counts as water. Your tea, a little bit of coffee can kind of count as your bonus. So like if you're following the 8x8, let your water, your tea and other things kind of bump you up over that to get to maybe some of those other levels of guidelines. For soda, it's a hard no. In fact, I've had clients where we've actually set the guideline that for each soda they drink, they have to have twice as much plain water as whatever they had as soda. And I know some of you're thinking soda, club soda. So I put this back in the same category as like the tea, where let it be the bonus. And this sort of opens a can of worms about carbonation, because carbonation requires calcium for your body to process it. And if you're not getting enough calcium, your body will pull it from your bones. So it's really important that club soda is not our primary source of hydration. There's also some evidence that it's not actually hydrating or thirst quenching. So again, let this be like the bonus over your 64 ounces of water. Next question is, can drinking water make me less hungry? So this is kind of complicated. The answer is yes and no. Oftentimes, many of us mistake the thirsty signal for hunger. And sometimes when our organs are depleted or feel that lack of energy and fatigue, our body then sends the hunger signals because it needs fuel. So if we're properly hydrated, you may receive fewer hunger signals from the body. And I think we can also get better at differentiating between thirst and hunger as we're more hydrated. I also think this question comes from the idea of, if I drink a ton of water, do I eat less? Like, can I skip a meal because I had a ton of water? And the answer is no. If you fill your stomach with water, you may feel full, but it's short-lived and it's not nutrition, which your body requires. So your body will continue to send hunger signals until it gets nutrients. Make sense? All right, I've also had people ask what temperature water they should drink. So some studies say that drinking cold water may actually help you burn a couple extra calories because your body has to work harder to maintain its core body temperature while processing that cold water. On the other hand, some studies say that drinking hot water may help with weight loss because your body compensates for the warm water. It brings your internal temperature down, which can activate your metabolism. So basically, you have a similar answer, both from science, saying that both temperatures can do the same thing in different ways. So I sort of feel like, don't worry about the temperature, just drink the water, right? I will add that hot water, warm water, helps with peristalsis, or the contraction of your intestines, and that helps to clear out waste from the body. So holding onto that waste creates a lot of the bloating. So when we remove that, it allows us to get rid of that quote unquote water weight that we sometimes hear about, or that bloated feeling that we have. Finally, how much is too much? Too much is like 5 to 6 liters. Again, that converts to like 170 to 200 ounces. It's just too much. The problem is with too much water, it can actually flush out the good stuff with the bad stuff. Depending on how quickly you drink it, I've had clients exacerbate acid reflux with too much water. Frankly, this is mostly an issue with athletes, and I'm really rarely concerned that someone's drinking too much water. So, because just most people don't get enough. So let's wrap this up with a couple tips to get your water in. You may want to just set an alarm that goes off every hour that's a reminder to get up and get a glass of water, right? You may want to have a large container that sits in front of you on your desk, or that you always have with you at home. And then maybe you only need to drink 2 or 3 of those a day. And having it in front of you all the time is really just a visual reminder to take a sip. If you want flavor, you could add lemon or lime, or frankly, any citrus fruits, or a combination of citrus fruits, or cucumber. Some people add drops of flavored stevia, which is not my favorite. But if it's 1 or 2 drops and a whole lot of water, then okay. For me personally, a straw or a bottle of water makes it a lot easier to drink than a glass. And for me also, I know I drink room temperature water faster than cold water. So if it helps you, maybe try a different temperature water to keep it, to keep getting it down. And depending on how you work mentally with goals and targets, you may want to aim for more than what you actually need so that you get enough. There are studies that show if the goal is 1.9 liters, people will get somewhere around 1.5 liters. So it might work for you to set the goal higher, and then you're actually getting what the target was. So overall, as I say with everything, don't drive yourself crazy with the details, or, the ounces or the temperature, all the things. Just, if it works for you, stick with the 8x8 rule, or up your game and shoot for 12 8-ounce cups of water. Again, I care less about the temperature and more about whatever temperature you're actually going to drink. Especially right now, just keep drinking water. It helps flush out the body, support your organ functions and your health. And who knows, you may even notice more energy.
As always, guys, I'm your host, Jenn Trepeck. You can find me on Instagram at Jenn Trepeck, JennTrepeck. Our Facebook page is also at Jenn Trepeck. Our Facebook group is at Salad with a Side of Fries podcast. And we want to hear from you. So look for us on social media. Tell us what you're enjoying, what you want more of. And if you haven't already, of course, become a member. Remember, go to glow.fm/salad with a side of fries. So you're getting this week's member exclusive, the creamy quinoa pudding. Guys, one more time, thank you, Paula Rizzo, for sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Get out there and make some lists.
Exactly. Go do something for yourself today, right?
For sure.
Thanks.
Well, friends, that's it for today's episode of Salad with a Side of Fries. Congratulations for making yourself and your health a priority. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to click subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast platform. Share us with a friend, and we'll be back next week. Always remember, you deserve it, and you are worth it. Happy healthy.